Finally, we have received confirmation of Universal Studios Great Britain. With the British government securing a deal with Comcast, this massive announcement was aired on many news channels on the 8th of April, stating that this park would be ready to open up in 2031. Crazy to think that 6 years from now, there will be a Universal Studios in Bedford. It's crazy. Now, I'm sure you've all seen the news on this anyways. You're probably wondering, what has Crump's Coasters got to actually add to this? Well, I wanted to dive deeper into what we could possibly see in this park in terms of themes, ride, manufacturers, and so much more. All while covering some of the key facts that have been laid out by the British government and Universal Studios themselves. And make sure you stay tuned till the very end, because there's a lot of bold predictions on here and I want to know your guys' opinions. So without further ado, let's look at where, when, and what Universal Studios are actually doing. The park is set to be located in Bedfordshire, right between Kempston and Stewartby, just on the outskirts of Bedford. The land itself is situated right next to the A421 and two very big major train lines. These train lines are Marston Vale Line and the Midlands Main Line, making this park super accessible to everybody across the UK. Alongside that, this park is very well connected by train lines and direct transport links to London and Luton airports. Over half of England can reach the location of the Universal Studios within 2 hours. The actual proposed site for the Universal Studios is over 500 acres. Now, comparing that to the next two biggest parks in the UK, you have Fort Park, which has 490 acres of land, and then you have Alton Towers with just over 550 acres of land, making this a hell of a lot bigger than some of the UK's parks. With recent government approval, there isn't exactly an estimated time on when everything will be going ahead though, although we can definitely guarantee that no major work would be taking place till, very earliest 2026, with plans to have this park completed within a 5-year window. The government wants to work really closely with Universal Studios themselves by taking the power out of the local council's hands and handing it over to the government, stating that the CEO of Universal Studios could come straight to Downing Street if there was any issues, hoping to make 2031 a really achievable date. This investment will pump over 50 billion into the UK's economy. Alongside that, it would create over 28,000 jobs, with most of those people working there being located in Bedfordshire. This would make Universal Studios one of the largest employers in the whole of that area. Alongside that, this would be the very first Universal Studios in Europe, making it a very tourist-heavy attraction. Universal Studios already operate some of the best parks across the world, with Orlando, Hollywood, Singapore, and Japan already being fully operational, with Epic Universe coming on the 22nd of May. This would be the 6th addition to Universal Studios lineups. It would also host a 500-room hotel upon opening. So now, what you're already here for. The predictions. Now, as I said before, these predictions are going to be very bold, and some of them there may not be much more than it could be this themed area, but I'll try and make them as educated as possible with some sort of backup for the ideas that I've got. There's a lot to digest, so sit down and enjoy the video. As stated on the Universal Studio UK's website, there is no confirmation of any lands until planning permission gets approved. But we can still make some really big predictions based upon the conceptual art for the park. Starting with the elephants on the concept art. This bloody big coaster located on the left side of the map. What could this be? Let's start by covering the building it seems to be located in. This ride looks like it could have multiple indoor sections, with presumably some dark ride elements to it. I'd even go as far to say as about half the ride could be inside. Now, I can't speculate much on the inside of the layout, but we can talk about the outside. It seems to be an LSM launched coaster, most likely manufactured by Intamin, with some of Universal's best coasters being manufactured by them, like Velocicoaster and Hiccup's Wind Gliders in Epic Universe. The layout looks as if you'll be coming out of the indoor section into a big airtime hill, whilst launching you into what seems to be a huge spike, possibly becoming the tallest coaster in the UK. Then coming down backwards onto a switch track and to what seems like a massive, huge inversion, back up a twisted spike that's a bit smaller than the first spike, with another switch track taking you back through the rest of the layout with possibly 3 more inversions, until it seems you reach the brake run of sorts, taking you back into the indoor section. Now, if I had to guess what we could see in this section, I'd be predicting a Back to the Future ride, as this would probably make the most sense with all the indoor sections on the ride and the sort of speed that you'd be getting up to. I think we'd see 2 trains operating on this coaster, with them possibly even being multi-dimensional trains. Alongside these bold predictions, I think this coaster could reach speeds of over 80 miles per hour, and the main spike being over 220 foot tall. There even seems to be a miniature stage which could be hosted for various events just outside the main building. So moving on to the next area, just below this massive coaster, we have an area which could be really well suited for a Paddington Bear area. Now, it seems to be home to 2 flat rides, a play area, and either an indoor family coaster or a dark ride themed to Paddington. The 2 flat rides we are looking at could possibly be either a Huss breakdance or even maybe a Zamperla octopus. For the ride situated next to this, it seems to be a sort of Zamperla Samba balloon model, but I'm not actually too sure, as the concept art, you can't really zoom in that good and get a decent picture of it. Obviously, they probably haven't even thought about manufacturers for these flat rides yet, but if I had to guess on some rides, there'd be my guesses for them. With the dark ride, this could just be themed to a standalone story, or perhaps even a story from the film, a bit like Gangster Granny's Crown Jewels over in Alton Towers. Further up the park, we seem to have a huge indoor building, which could be home to many things, but I'm saying indoor multi-dimensional coaster here. Possibly themed to the likes of Fast and Furious, or this could be a huge indoor area with multiple flat rides and possibly even a family coaster inside of it. It seems likely Universal would plan for an indoor area given the weather in the UK. We could even possibly see an area like Jurassic World or James Bond inside of there. Right next to this indoor area, we have what seems to be like 2 massive drop towers, or possibly even observation towers. I'd be more tempted to go with 2 drop towers, as having an observation tower there wouldn't really make too sense, as it's not central to the park. Next up, we have what seems to be the longest coaster in the park. And from looking at this, it seems to be possibly a lift and launch coaster. This looks like it could be themed easily to Jurassic World, but honestly, I think that this is way too hard to put an exact theme onto. Either way, this coaster reminds me a bit of the Incredible Hulk, which is a sit-down B&M coaster. I think we could easily see this produced by Intamin or B&M here. The biggest peak of the ride, the lift hill, looks to me to be well over 180 foot. We could even possibly see a few midsection launches just to get the ride through what seems to be a really long layout. It looks as if you drop into the overbank and then go into some sort of helix and go back up to, there's a section just next to the drop of the lift hill, and then you will drop back down and follow the rest of the layout until you get over to the lake area, which in return you will loop back around and somehow end back up at the station, but I haven't quite figured out how you would get there. I think that there could be multiple tunnels located on this ride, as I'm only seeing a couple of track above ground, a couple of bits of track above ground, or some of this could even be perhaps covered up by trees as well. If I had to guess, I think we could see speeds of up to 55 miles per hour on here, and possibly 4 to 5 inversions as well. The big explosion. Right next to this huge outdoor coaster, we have a massive arena, which would most likely be a big show building. Like at many of the parks, they tend to have quite a few stunt shows. Now, this could be themed to a Jurassic World, or even possibly James Bond. This show would include stunts and plenty of practical effects, as seen by the concept art. Now, there's not really much else that I can say about this area other than it seems like it's going to seat thousands of people. But just below that area, we have 2 buildings that look suspiciously big. One of them with a facade and one of them without a facade. The one with a facade looks almost like it could be a Harry Potter theme, possibly even Lord of the Rings maybe, or perhaps a Monsters themed dark ride, a bit like Monsters Unleashed over in Epic Universe. Just a bit further along, we can see the next big building, which seems to have no facade on the front of it, which again, I think will share a similar theme to whatever the previous building is, as they're both in the same area. Now, I don't think they would put two dark rides necessarily next to each other, and the building doesn't necessarily look big enough for a massive coaster inside, so perhaps it could be a multi-dimensional indoor coaster, a bit similar to the ones that we're going to be seeing at Chessington and Alton Towers. I believe that we could see something fairly similar to that here, themed to either the Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, or even the monster sort of themed dark universe area, we'll call it. But perhaps this second big building could even just possibly be a maintenance bay or just a staff area. Now, moving on to the next part of the park, we can see another coaster completely outside. This looks like it's situated on top of a building almost, and I can't really figure out like the perception and the actual depth from obviously this sort of 2D drawing. But from what I can see that whole area around there being themed to the Minions, with a few indoor rides, restaurants and shopping areas built around. This coaster would most likely be manufactured by Intamin again, as with a lot of the other coasters, and it just kind of makes sense to stick with the one manufacturer when working on a park anyways, as you'll usually get a much better deal. The ride seems to be much smaller than the other two rides that we can see, leading me to believe that this could be some sort of family thrill coaster or just a family coaster in general. Looking at some of the track, this looks like it's going to be another lift hill coaster, and I would probably predict this coaster to be about 100 to 120 sort of feet tall. Alongside that, I think we could see speeds of up to 40 miles per hour on this coaster as well. Now, moving on to the main entrance of the park, with a Hollywood-themed area it seems. It also seems like it has integrated turnstiles and security points on the entrance, which should hopefully prevent it from looking like Alton Towers' entrance with these ugly tents outside the front. And hopefully it makes the whole entrance to the park just a lot more streamlined, getting a hell of a lot quicker. As you enter, you obviously see the iconic Universal Studios globe as well. And alongside that, you've got a building to your right, which could possibly be some toilets and guest services. Now, heading further through the archway, it seems to take you onto what I was calling the Hollywood-themed area. Now, it looks a bit like it's a Hollywood Boulevard almost, with many shops around and possibly restaurants too. I don't think we'll see any rides on this main entrance, and they'll just stick to the areas further back on the park for the rides. On the left of the main street, you can see what seems to be a hotel entrance as well. Alongside that, you can see what is the hotel and what seems to be a hotel car park as well. Now, as we know, this hotel is going to be home to 500 rooms upon opening. Now, you may have noticed that there's a couple of buildings that I just didn't mention around the park. This is purely because even my brain cannot predict or think of any ideas for them. I'd assume that the smaller buildings could be areas for shopping, food or beverage outlets, or even possibly host a few smaller indoor rides / your sort of game sections that you have there. I know some of these are very bold predictions, but if you do genuinely disagree, then please comment down below. And if you want me to do a proper deeper dive into sort of the individual buildings and what I think we could see in each individual building, then drop a comment below, because I'd be more than happy to do that. So thank you all so much for staying tuned to the very end of the video. And if you disagree with any of my predictions, then please comment down below why you disagree and what you think could actually take place for that area or ride. If you want to stay up to date with all of the Universal Studios news and construction updates, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. And other than that, I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video.